What's going on, guys? Today I'm going to show you how to use keyframes in Adobe Premiere. Now, keyframes can be used in other programs such as After Effects or Flash, but we're going to use strictly Premiere today. Now, keyframes can be used for things like moving objects from one side of the screen to the other, making objects bigger and smaller, and even twisting objects. Now, obviously there's other reasons to use keyframes, and there's plenty of them, but those are the three that we're going to go over today. But before we get too far, we should probably define keyframes. In media production, a keyframe is a location on a timeline which marks the beginning or end of a transition. It holds special information that defines where a transition should start or stop. Alright, so long story short, it's the point that you place down to tell the computer where to start the transition and where to end the transition. And that'll make more sense as we continue to go through the goals and the steps that we're going to go through in this video. So let's get started. Alright, so our first goal here is to move the red circle from the left-hand side to the right-hand side using an animation. In order to complete this process, we're going to need to open up Adobe Premiere. Now, I've chosen to use a resolution of 1920 by 1080, but feel free to choose whatever you want. Now, I've also already imported my own file, which was the ball PSD that I created. However, in order to import any images, you can just double-click in the project and it'll allow you to import those. Now from here, what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and drag this file into our timeline here. Now, as you can see, the ball is right in the middle of the screen and it's pretty large. It doesn't give us a whole bunch of room to move around, so in order to fix this, we're going to shrink it down and kind of scoot it over. In order to do that, you'll need to click on the file that's in the timeline, and up here in the left-hand side under the effect controls, you're going to see motion, position, scale, so on and so forth. So we're actually going to want to drag it all the way over and probably shrink it down to right about maybe 60. And then we can scoot it over just a little bit more. Now, as you can see, the ball is starting on the left-hand side like it was in the demo. In order to move it to the right, we're going to need to create an animation. In order to create an animation, you need to click the little clock that says Toggle Animation. Now, what this does is it drops a keyframe. And we need to tell it how long we want this to last. So we'll drag our little blue line, which is kind of more or less just skimming through the video itself, to where we want it to move to. Right there is about good. It'll move from right around 11 seconds to 4 seconds. And I mean, it's 11 milliseconds, not 11 seconds. All the way up to 4 seconds. And then what we'll need to do is we'll need to drag across again. As you can see, that created a brand new keyframe. So in between this keyframe and this keyframe, we're telling the computer we want the object right there to move from left to right. The same works for up and down. So if we wanted to start it here again and move it up or down, we would place it there first, and then we could scroll all the way over, and then we could also scoot it all the way down. Now, as you can see, the ball not only moves from left to right, but it moves from top to bottom. You can continue to play with these and continue to position it wherever you want around. However, we're going to move forward into our next goal. Alright, goal number 2 is to go from a small circle and into a large circle. We're going to use keyframes to actually animate this so that it literally looks like it is growing. So with goal number 2, we're going to repeat the same actions as goal number 1, and we're going to open up Premiere and use a 1920 by 1080 resolution. We're also going to use the same graphic that we got by double-clicking into the project files. Once again, we're going to drag that graphic over to our timeline, and then we're going to click on it. By clicking on it, it once again opens up effect controls. This time, our goal is to grow it from a small ball and into a large ball, or a small circle and into a large circle. We're going to go ahead and scale it down to about 60, and we're going to make it grow from the beginning of our timeline at 60. So we're going to start our animation, and then we're going to make it grow all the way up to 100 by the end of the timeline. And obviously you can go past 100, you can enlarge the image, you can continue way past the screen and make it incredibly large. However, we're just going to stick with 100. Now if you see, we can go from small to large. I often use this trick when I only have a still image and I want to create some animation to keep the viewer interested in what's going on. Alright, we can also apply goal number 1 to this. We can use position keyframes and we can start it where it's at and actually move it all the way over here. So we'll start it here, and then we'll go to the end of our timeline, and we'll move it all the way over. Now, as you can see, the ball is going to grow and move from left to right. Our third and final goal is to make that circle rotate through using keyframes and animation. Alright, so once again, we're going to launch Premiere and we're going to use the same settings of 1920 by 1080. We're also going to use that same image that we imported by double clicking on the project files. We're going to go ahead and click and drag and move that into our timeline again. So as you can see, here it is. Now in order to rotate it, we're going to do the exact same thing by clicking on the file in our timeline, and then in the top left hand corner, you're going to see Effect Controls. Now we've worked with position, we've worked with scale. This time we're going to work with rotation. So once again, we need to have a starting spot. Now let's say we wanted it to stay still for the first 1 second. We can actually move this over to 1 second. And then we can click our clock. So for this entire time, we're going to stay at whatever that keyframe is, which is 0. Now let's say we wanted to spin it. We're going to move it down to about 2 seconds, and we're going to spin it 180 degrees. In order to do that, you just once again click, and then you can drag and move it to 180. And then we can go ahead and move it further down. We'll move it to about 3 seconds now. And we can finish all the way around to 360. Perfect. So now what's going to happen is we're going to stay flat, and then we're going to start spinning to 180 and then 360. Now let's say we wanted to spin it a whole bunch of times. Say you're trying to make a rotating spiral or something along those lines. That's pretty easy as well. So we're going to pick up right from where we left off at that final 360 degrees, and we're going to move down to 4 seconds. At 4 seconds, it says 1 times 0, which means that it's rotated 1 full time, and you can continue to go. So let's go ahead and crank that up to, let's say 4. So right about there. So now what's going to happen is in between this keyframe and this keyframe, it's going to rotate 4 times, or 3 times because we've already rotated once. So go ahead and watch this. Stayed still, rotate 180, 360, and then rotate 4 times. Now in order to delete these keyframes, say you wanted to get rid of them, we can select them by clicking and dragging, and then hitting the delete key. This puts us all the way back. There's no more keyframes, nothing for it to animate to because it doesn't know what to do. So we're going to restart this. The check mark is still checked. And in order to, because you've deleted that initial keyframe that was there, in order to restart it at 0, we're going to need to drop a keyframe. So this is helpful if we want to go from here to here, remain at 0 still, and then say we wanted to rotate that 360 degrees. Which is right about there. And so we'll stay at 0, and then it'll go from 0 to 360. Now let's combine them all. So let's start by positioning the ball over on the left-hand side and dropping it down to 60. Now the easy way to kind of change that size, if you know the exact size you want, is you can click on the box and it'll give you the option to type numbers, which is perfect, and we'll move it all the way over. So now we're over on the left side, and we've set our scale to 60. Now it didn't adjust any of our animation because we haven't checked it to tell it to toggle animation. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start everything right here, and then we're going to move all the way to 4 seconds, and we're going to tell it to move across the screen while moving to 100% in scale and while rotating 360 degrees. And because we didn't set an initial keyframe here, it's going to just keep it at that 360 degrees and it won't actually move. So what we need to do is go back to here and set this to 0. Now, as you can see, anytime you change that number, it will put a keyframe down. It will lay that keyframe down no matter what you do. So you need to make sure that if you're adjusting a keyframe that you either remove the other one or make sure you're precisely on that same keyframe so you don't have some weird twists and turns. It's something that you have to play with, something that you have to get used to. Now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and hit play, and it'll move from left to right while growing to 100% and rotating 360 degrees. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that video, and I hope it taught you something about keyframes within Premiere. I hope you can also apply this to other programs that do use keyframes. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave those below. Hit the subscribe button right here or the like button down below. Yeah, have a great day.